Hi, and welcome to the Keys to Therapy. In today's episode, I'm going to cover should therapists be a blank slate or not? So, a lot of times in grad school, a lot of programs or certain modalities really emphasize that therapists need to be a blank slate. You need to be somebody that clients can imprint on. They can just see you as like the only completely neutral person potentially in their life that they can just go ahead and put all of their stuff on, talk about anything, say anything, whatever, and be able to have that freedom to fully express and process and everything else. So a lot of programs will talk about, being a blank slate. If a client asks you a personal question, reflect back to them. Why is this important to you? Why is this something that you feel you need to know? Things like that, where you always kind of answer a question with a question. And a lot of times, a lot of programs, and not even just programs, this is supervisors, this is employers, this is agencies, things like that. Any formal structure basically is going to tell therapists, again, for the most part, that you need to be that blank slate and you can't share a lot of your personality, you can't share a lot of who you are. You can't talk a lot about your personal life. You can't self-disclose very often. Like, you need to remain as neutral in that space as possible. To me, this is an extremely outdated way of approaching therapy. So I get that there should be some boundaries, and I'll talk a little bit about where those should be. But for the most part, therapy is not this very impersonal type of relationship that I think sometimes schools and certain places really want to try to make it to be. So, for one, you will never be a completely blank slate. You just won't. Right? Like, somebody can look at you and they're going to be able to tell some things about you right away. They're going to be able to kind of gauge what your age is. They're gonna kind of be able to gauge what your race or ethnicity is. They will be able to see, depending on the client, if there's any sort of the therapist, like accommodations that you may need. Is there a certain way that you're walking or carrying yourself? Do you need something to make therapy more accessible? Do you have glasses? So are you in a wheelchair? Do you have a hearing aid, right? Like, they're going to be able to see some of these aspects of who you are, and they're going to make their assumptions about you kind of right off the bat from there. There's going to be things like, are you married? And they're going to see rings and they're going to see this jewelry that's going to give them an idea of who you are or what your status is. They're going to look around your office and they're going to judge your decor and see kind of what your personality's like and who you are based off of that. They're going to see if you have any like family photos or anything around, and they're going to ask questions about that. They may see your diplomas and know places that you've lived or where you've gone to school, or if the diplomas have the year, they're going to again be able to gauge like, how long have you been doing this for? They can look up your license and see how long you've been licensed for. Like, they're going to hear how you speak and be able to tell, do you have an accent? What region are you from? What slang are you using that you're not even realizing is just part of your normal vocabulary? So, do you have pets? Sometimes, like, I know I do virtual sessions, you're going to hear the dogs bark occasionally or a collar jingle. So they're going to know a little bit more about my home life right off the bat if they're hearing that. So there's going to be things that just kind of make it impossible to be a blank slate. And you can try in other ways, but there's going to be these big, like, glaringly obvious aspects of who you are that are already going to inform the client a little bit more about who they're working with and what you're like. I think also there's going to be some clients who want more of that blank slate, right? They're going to just kind of push all that out of your mind. They could be talking to kind of anybody, and they're going to want things to be as neutral as possible. And that's fine. There's some modalities therapists use that they are going to want to answer every question with a question, and they're going to be a lot more impersonal. But I think, especially nowadays, most clients do not want a blank slate therapist. They want to know more about you. So clients are picking therapists based off their pictures, based off their website aesthetics, based off how they describe themselves, based off their social media and their personalities. There's all kinds of different factors for why people are picking the therapist that they are, but a lot of them have to do with who the person is more so than what trainings they've had or where they've gone to school, because a lot of those letters and acronyms and stuff don't really mean anything to clients. So they're reading the about me's on your website. They're seeing how much it is that you know about what they're going through and what you can relate to. They want the consult calls to be able to meet with you first before committing to therapy. And in this world now where there's so many choices for everything, right? Like we can be on our phones and order stuff from anywhere. You can go on a dating app and talk to anybody anywhere. You can find 10 different places in your area potentially that all have different types of pizza, and you can choose. Like there's so many aspects that clients are now accustomed to, and of like just having choices. So who you are is going to matter a lot more, I think, than it ever has in the therapy space, because you're not just, you know, stuck with whoever's in your town or in a certain radius, or even sometimes just like who takes your insurance or not with super bills and like different things that can make therapy more accessible, and not just, you know, you have to go with the person you're assigned on your plan. And I think as people are a lot more aware of their own identities, their beliefs, stuff like that, especially if they're in a marginalized group, they're going to want to see people who they feel safe with and who understand them. And given like the political environment and things that are going on right now, I think that is true more than it has ever been. I think the things that clients are talking about and asking about and specifically seeking out are so much more personal than ever before when they're looking for a therapist. So honestly, for any healthcare provider, but especially a therapist, because they're meeting with you so much and sharing so many personal things. So I think as a therapist coming in to this field, or even one that's been in here for a while and seen things shift, you're gonna have to work on your own ideas of what a blank slate is and what you're comfortable with sharing and not sharing with clients. I've seen a lot of discourse on Facebook groups for therapists where therapists are like, therapy's not political. I'm not going to share my views. That shouldn't matter. I can still do the same work with anybody. And that's their personal view. And that's fine if that's what you want to subscribe to. Of I'm not sharing any of my views politically or religious views or anything like that with clients. But by doing that, clients are potentially then not going to book with you if that's something that they're genuinely struggling with, or something that's a very big part of their identity, and they need to establish that safety with you. So I think you have to be prepared that some clients are going to not like or respect that. And there's going to be some clients potentially that you see that once you share your views, that's a no-go for them. And that's something to be, I guess, start to adjust to and be okay with, because they have the right to pick their own therapist. So, but I think what I'm seeing, it's less about the clients being concerned about like how to handle that. It's more the therapists being uncomfortable, especially ones who have been in the field a long time and have been taught more of that blank slate approach. I think a lot of younger therapists or newer therapists are able to embrace like, hey, this is the world that I'm in right now, and this is what the field looks like. You know, somebody wants to know if their therapist is LGBTQ plus friendly. They want to know that when they're talking to you about an aspect of their culture that you understand, and they don't have to sit here and define everything for you and spend a half the session educating you on what certain things mean. They don't want to talk to you about a political belief and worry about if this is something that you truly believe too, or if it's something that you're sitting there judging them for. And that all makes sense to me. I mean, I think all of us tend to choose providers in any way, right? Like you're going to choose a doctor who you feel more comfortable with. Or you're going to try to, if you have the option. You're going to go to restaurants and places that you feel more welcome in. So why wouldn't you choose a therapist that is along those same lines? So I think the blank slate approach is outdated. I think it And like I said, unless you're working from a very specific modality that requires that, I don't think it's something that's realistic. Clients are assessing us sometimes just as much as we're assessing them. They're looking for small changes. They'll comment on your hair that's been changed. Like, they'll notice when I've put a decor in a different spot. Even not telling them I moved houses, and then having moved a few months ago, and they're like, oh, I noticed like the window and more natural light. And I'm like, yeah, I moved. So they'll hear two dogs bark and be like, oh, okay, I hear a couple of them. What do they look like? What are their names? What am I going to do? Be like, no, that's not relevant to our session. No, that's terrible. It's like, that's not personable. It's not going to help build that rapport in that relationship. Instead, I'm like, do you want to see them? Or and I turn the camera, or I'll say something along the lines of like, yeah, I have two dogs. So, and then if they're like, I have one, I'm like, I need to see this dog. I need to see the cat. I need to see the creature. Show me the baby. Like, there's these different aspects of rapport building that I think can be really, really helpful if you are more of that person versus that blank slate. And again, in this environment, I think there's so many groups that are being attacked, and there's so many people that feel attacked, that you kind of have to be more clear on where you stand, or clients aren't going to feel safe. So you don't have to get into all the ins and outs, but I've had clients ask me, and I have an episode on this, they've asked about religion. And, for some of them, it's very important for them to know what my background is, whether that's a deal breaker for them moving forward, or they want to understand like how much to get into about their practices. So, and I think that it's not even just, with, like I said, political or religious views. Sometimes it's more like a cultural thing. Like sometimes, like, for example, like I worked with the military, right? So I had a little bit of experience knowing about military culture, but not a lot. And so coming into a military base, I let my clients know right away, like, hey, I'm still like newer to this space, and there may be certain things that I don't know about. So, and if it's something that I feel is really relevant, I'll ask you. And if you want to explain it, that'd be helpful, but don't feel obligated to. Or don't feel obligated to explain every acronym and things. I'll get the context clues. And so I noticed over time, especially just me being a civilian in general, a lot of them would explain something and be like, do you know what that is? And then they briefly explain it, and then they move on. So, and then over time, obviously being embedded in a medical clinic on a military base, I learned a lot of stuff very quickly, and took the time to educate myself on some stuff too, writing cheat sheets of like the different ranks and what that means and all of that stuff, which was really helpful, because then I made sure I wasn't just putting it on them to teach me. I was educating myself on it so that I could show up more authentically in sessions with them and focus on the parts that mattered. So some of those types of things, they didn't necessarily get to choose me. They got to choose if they were going to stick with me, but they didn't always get to choose if they were going to, who they were assigned. So I tried to make sure that I learned as much about that culture as I could to be a better therapist for them. You're also going to find that some therapists or some clients, when they're searching for therapists, they want to know if you're married or have been married, because if they have a lot of marital issues going on, for some of them, that's very important for them to understand if you've had personal experience with that. A lot of them are not as focused on your professional experience as they are your personal. So they want to know if you have kids. So I see a lot of people in therapy groups requesting like, a specific age range. A client would like a therapist in their 50s who has children to help them with these issues. Like, they're looking for people who are a lot more like them. Not in a way that creates an echo chamber, but in a way that just helps them feel safe to talk about anything and everything that they need to. So a lot of clients are searching more and more for people who are more like them, who have more characteristics that feel like those are the things they're looking for. And none of it has anything to do with trainings. It's very rare that they're like, I want somebody who has this level of education and these many years of experience and this much training. Like, that's a lot less common than who you are as a person. So now with that, you don't want to over disclose. You don't want to create poor boundaries with the client. you don't want to spend sessions like a back and forth, oh my God, me too, and like sharing a lot, right? So if they ask about my dogs and I'm like, oh, do you have pets? Like, then that's what we'll talk about for a couple minutes. And I make sure we move it on to theirs. Like, here's mine, here's their names, let's go. And then switch it up, right? If somebody says something like, oh, I see you're married, how long have you been married? Then I let them know, oh, almost 10 years. And that's it. Don't go into a huge long speech about how we met and all the things. Like, no, that's not clinically relevant. That's just me taking up space and being excited to talk to somebody. Like, poor boundaries. We're not doing all that. That's making it friend level. So I think being able, when you're shorter like that, but in a kind way, that establishes a boundary immediately. And I've had clients be like, I don't know if I can ask you this. And I'll say, like, ask it and I'll tell you if you can. Like, you can ask it. I don't have to answer it. And, like, again, making it light, but letting them know, like, I'm not going to tell you a whole lot of stuff. But that's where you have to be mindful of what your own triggers are with this whole blank slate approach. What are the things that you don't feel comfortable sharing with clients, or the things you're like, I'm absolutely not going to answer that. So, if somebody asks if you are religious or you're familiar with religion and you're like, oh yeah, I was raised in that. And they're like, oh, but you don't really go to church now? Like, you can decide how you want to answer that if that's your life, right? Are you going to say like, no, not really? Or I have my own way of practicing, or occasionally, like, what are going to be like your quick little tidbits of like, here's a small bit of an answer, without, again, over disclosing or pushing it into territory that you feel like you're the one being evaluated, or now the sessions become about you. So make sure you got somewhere in there what your boundaries are with all those conversations. And I think that will be really helpful, and for you to help you understand, like, oh yeah, not going there, but also like to convey that to clients so that they know. But yeah, again, to me, unless it's a specific modality, the blank slate approach is just outdated. That's just not really what people are looking for it's just not even who people as therapists want to be. That's kind of exhausting sometimes, to just sit there and be so like, oh, let me answer a question with a question. It's like, if the biggest success for therapy is the therapeutic relationship, you're building that relationship by sharing little tidbits here and there. Again, nothing too crazy and personal, but just little aspects of who you are, makes the session more comfortable for the other person typically. So as long as you're not imposing your views, or passing a lot of judgment to them on theirs, I think that there's ways to disclose. And like I said, even without you speaking, they look at a picture on Psychology Today or your website, and you're already disclosing a lot about who you are. So understanding that there's already a bunch of things that they already are going to know about you or assume about you before they even speak to you. And once you get comfortable with that, then you can go ahead and figure out where those lines are for the other categories. But be yourself, this job can be really draining and stressful and heavy, just like it can be rewarding and fun sometimes and all of that. But in order to keep it more on that second side of things, I think the more authentic you are to who you are, the easier sessions are going to flow too. So be you. Some client out there will really appreciate that, and you'll attract more people who are, I don't know, you just like vibe better with because of it. So dye your hair, wear your goth outfits, like dress how you want to dress, as long as it's appropriate, obviously. But all of those things are what's going to make clients stay with you and really enjoy working with you. So that's it, my 2 cents. So if you would like to comment below, give me some of your own experiences, perspectives with any of the things I mentioned. I would love to hear about what you've gone through. So definitely share, subscribe to my channel, and I will hopefully see you next time. Bye.